Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. The moment I stepped back into my house, I knew something was off. It wasn't anything obvious. No misplaced furniture, no broken locks, no sign that someone had been where they shouldn't. But there was a shift, a subtle disturbance in the air, like the energy of the place had changed in the days I'd been gone. I dropped my suitcase by the door, taking a slow look around. The house was clean, maybe too clean. Sophia had insisted she'd be busy while I was away. Yet everything looked as if it had been carefully reset, wiped of any trace of activity. The faint scent of fresh flowers lingered in the air, something floral and expensive. It was the kind of detail she always made sure to have when hosting guests. I walked into the kitchen, opening the fridge. Fully stocked, almost curated. Fresh berries, imported cheese, a bottle of wine that hadn't been there before. The kind of thing someone buys when they're planning to impress. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the last few messages Sophia had sent me. Hope your trip is going well. Miss you. Busy day at the club, just got home. Exhausted. Love you. Can't wait to see you soon. Have a safe flight. Perfectly normal messages. Too normal. They didn't sound like Sophia. They sounded crafted. I made my way to the bedroom, my fingers tapping against my phone. The bed was perfectly made, the sheets tucked in tightly. A strange detail, considering Sophia rarely bothered to fix the bed when she was in a hurry. I opened the closet, scanning through her side of the wardrobe. Something was missing. I couldn't put my finger on it yet, but I knew my wife's habits. That's when I spotted it. An unfamiliar shopping bag tucked at the back of the closet, behind her usual collection of handbags and designer scarves. I pulled it out carefully, opening it to reveal a neatly wrapped gift box. No tag, no note, just an expensive-looking package waiting to be given to someone. I lifted the lid. Inside was a sleek leather wallet, clearly new, embossed with initials that weren't mine. A slow, creeping sensation spread through my chest. I turned the wallet over in my hands, running my fingers along the engraved initials. The letters were small but clear, and they didn't belong to anyone I knew. Not a family member. Not a friend. Not me. I exhaled, carefully placing everything back the way I found it. There was no need to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was a gift for a relative, a co-worker, someone I hadn't met yet. But deep down I knew something wasn't right, and I was going to find out exactly what it was. I stood in the bedroom, staring at the wallet in my hands, my mind working through the possible explanations. The initials weren't mine. They weren't anyone I recognized. Sophia hadn't mentioned buying a gift for anyone. And yet, here it was, an expensive, neatly wrapped present hidden in the back of our closet like something she didn't want me to find. I placed the wallet back in the box and slid it into the bag, returning it to its exact position behind her things. No need to raise suspicion. If this was what I thought it was, I wasn't going to confront her without knowing the full story. Accusing someone without proof only gives them time to cover their tracks. Taking a slow breath, I left the bedroom and moved through the house, my eyes sharper now, looking for other signs, things I wouldn't have noticed before. There were small details, nothing glaring, but they added up. The pillows on the couch arranged differently than usual. A faint scent of cologne in the hallway, one that wasn't mine. A wine glass left in the sink, lipstick smudged along the rim, though Sophia rarely drank alone. The house was clean, almost staged, like someone had gone through the trouble of erasing something. I pulled out my phone and checked Sophia's last messages again. Hope your trip is going well. Miss you. Busy day at the club, just got home. Exhausted. Love you. Can't wait to see you soon. Have a safe flight. Each one was perfectly timed, perfectly spaced apart, like they were sent just to keep me from asking questions. I scrolled further back, noticing a pattern. She never asked specifics about my trip, never followed up with details of her own day beyond vague mentions of the country club or errands. If I didn't know better, I'd say she was checking in, not because she missed me, but to make sure I wasn't coming home early. I clenched my jaw and locked my phone. I needed to be smart about this. Sophia was careful. If she was hiding something, she wasn't going to make it easy to find. If I pushed too soon, she'd shut down, weave a perfect excuse, gaslight me into believing I was being paranoid. No, I needed her to think I suspected nothing. A few hours later, I heard the familiar sound of her car pulling into the driveway. I stayed in the kitchen, pretending to scroll through emails as the door opened and the sound of heels clicked against the hardwood floor. "Ethan," her voice rang out, sweet, effortless. "In here," I called back, keeping my tone neutral. She appeared in the doorway, all smiles, looking effortlessly put together in her white tennis skirt and fitted top. Her hair was pulled into a sleek ponytail, a hint of a glow on her skin like she had spent the afternoon outside. She walked over and leaned in, pressing a soft kiss against my cheek. "Missed you," she murmured, her arms wrapping around me briefly before pulling back. "How was your trip?" I smiled. "Good. Productive." She nodded, grabbing a bottle of water from the fridge. "I was just at the club. Long session today. I think my back is going to hate me tomorrow." She laughed lightly, stretching her arms. I watched her carefully. Her tone was natural, her expression easy, but something was off. I couldn't pinpoint it yet, but it was there, subtle, just beneath the surface. "How was your week?" I asked, leaning casually against the counter. She took a sip of water, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Busy. A lot of tennis. Some meetings for the charity gala. You know how it is." She was good. Smooth. But now I knew what to listen for. "Sound exhausting." She smiled, shaking her head. "You have no idea." I let the conversation flow, asking her about her week, letting her talk without pressing too hard. She didn't mention anything unusual, didn't slip up, didn't seem nervous. If I hadn't already felt the shift in the house, I might have believed her. As she moved around the kitchen, I casually tested the waters. "By the way, I was organizing the closet earlier. Found a gift bag in the back. Something special. It was quick, just a fraction of a second, but I saw it. The hesitation, the barely perceptible flicker in her expression before she recovered. "Oh, yeah, that's for Michelle's husband," she said smoothly, turning to grab something from the pantry. "She asked me to pick it up for his birthday next week." Lie. I kept my expression neutral, nodding. "Nice of you." She smiled, closing the pantry door. "Well, you know me. Always helping out." I watched her carefully. She didn't look nervous, but now I knew for sure she was hiding something. I spent the rest of the evening acting normal, making conversation, going through the motions like nothing was wrong. But in the back of my mind, the pieces were shifting, rearranging themselves into a picture I didn't like. Something had happened while I was gone, and I was going to find out exactly what. Sophia was good at lying. I had to give her that. The way she slid effortlessly from one excuse to another, never breaking eye contact, never fumbling over her words, it was impressive. If I hadn't already sensed something was wrong, I might have believed her. But now I was looking at everything through a different lens. The next morning, I waited until she left for her usual Saturday morning tennis session at the country club. As soon as I heard her car pull out of the driveway, I walked straight to the closet and pulled out the gift bag. The wallet was still inside, perfectly untouched, waiting to be given to someone. Michelle's husband. That's what she had claimed. A thoughtful birthday gift for a friend's spouse. Lie. I pulled my phone out and scrolled through my contacts until I found Michelle's number. We weren't close, but we'd spoken enough times at dinners and events. I hesitated for only a second before sending a casual message. Me. "Hey, Michelle. Hope you and Mark are doing well. Sophia mentioned she picked up a birthday gift for your husband. Just wanted to make sure it got to you guys okay." I set the phone down and waited. Less than 2 minutes later, the screen lit up with a response. "Michelle, huh? That's sweet of her, but Mark's birthday isn't for another 6 months, lol." The confirmation hit like a slow, sinking weight in my chest. I had given her the benefit of the doubt, let her lie play out just in case I was wrong. But I wasn't. Sophia had no intention of giving this to Michelle's husband, which meant it was for someone else. I exhaled through my nose, placing the wallet back exactly as I'd found it. No need to let her know I was onto her. Not yet. Instead, I had a better idea. I walked to my desk and grabbed a small knife from the drawer, flipping the wallet open. It was expensive, no doubt something from one of those designer brands she liked. The leather was smooth, pristine. I ran my fingers along the edges before carefully pulling out the small lining inside one of the card slots. With a precise cut, I sliced a thin opening just enough to make it noticeable when someone tried to use it. The damage was small, subtle, but enough to ruin the perfect craftsmanship. A detail only the person receiving the gift would notice. I sat back and smirked. A test. If she truly intended to give this to Michelle's husband, then I'd hear about it. A confused reaction. A casual mention of the damage. But if I heard nothing, then I'd know. I cleaned up, making sure every trace of my interference was undetectable, then went about my day as if nothing had changed. Sophia returned home later that afternoon, her energy as bright and effortless as ever. She hummed as she walked past me in the living room, dropping her tennis bag near the door before stretching her arms above her head. Long game, I asked casually. She sighed dramatically. Ugh, you have no idea. I swear, I played the worst set of my life today. I tilted my head. Did you win? She pouted. Barely. Lie. I forced a small chuckle, letting the conversation drift to other things. She didn't ask what I had done that morning. She didn't ask about my day at all, really. She never did anymore. Over the next few days, I watched her carefully, waiting for any sign that the gift had reached its intended recipient. But nothing. No mention of Michelle. No mention of Mark. No mention of the wallet at all. That meant only one thing. She hadn't given it away yet. I was patient. I let her routine play out, pretended to be the same unsuspecting husband she thought I was. Then, one evening, I got my first real clue. We were sitting on the couch, a movie playing in the background, when her phone buzzed beside her. She glanced at the screen, then quickly flipped it over, face down, before I could see the name. Casual. Effortless. Like second nature. Who was that? I asked, keeping my voice light. She stretched, feigning a yawn. Oh, just one of the ladies from the club. Something about the charity gala next month. Lie. Which one? She hesitated. Just for a second. A crack in the perfect facade. Anna, she said finally. Lie. I nodded, pretending to be disinterested, but my mind was already working. The wallet was still hidden in the closet. That meant she hadn't given it away yet. But she was still in contact with the person it was meant for. And now I had my next move. That night, after she fell asleep, I took her phone from the nightstand and carried it into the hallway. I had never gone through her messages before. Never needed to. But now, every instinct in me told me there was something inside that device she didn't want me to see. Her phone was locked, of course. But I had been with Sophia for years. I knew her passcode. She changed it sometimes, but not often. I typed in the one I remembered. Wrong. I frowned and tried again. Wrong. A slow, icy realization crept up my spine. She had changed it. Recently. My grip tightened around the phone. Sophia never had a reason to lock me out. Not before. She never cared if I used her phone to look something up or check directions while we were driving. But now, she was protecting it. I placed it back on her nightstand, exactly as I'd found it, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling for the next 2 hours. She was hiding something, and I was getting closer to finding out what. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, watching Sophia move through her routine. She was always graceful, always in control. Even now, when I knew she was lying, she carried herself with an effortless ease, acting like nothing had changed. But something had changed. I had spent the night thinking about that locked phone. She had always trusted me with it before. If she had changed the passcode, it meant she was protecting something. And if she was protecting something, it meant she was hiding something. I needed to find out what. Any plans today? I asked casually, taking a sip of coffee. She glanced up from her smoothie, giving me a soft smile. Same as usual. Tennis at the club, maybe lunch with the girls afterward. I nodded, watching her reaction carefully. That sounds nice. Maybe I'll stop by later. I haven't been to the club in a while. The slightest hesitation. A flicker of something in her expression before she recovered. Oh, that'd be great, she said smoothly, stirring her drink. Though I'll probably be tied up most of the day. You know how training is when a tournament is coming up. I set my cup down, my lips pressing into a thoughtful line. Right, gotta keep up with those private lessons. She smiled. Exactly. Lie. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. She was good, but she didn't realize that I was better. She thought she had me fooled, that I would just accept her words at face value. She had no idea I was already 2 steps ahead. An hour later, she kissed me goodbye, grabbed her tennis bag, and walked out the door. The moment I heard her car leave the driveway, I moved. I had a plan, and I wasn't going to waste time second-guessing myself. I grabbed my keys and drove to the club, parking a few spaces away from where I knew she usually left her car. If she was actually playing tennis, I'd see her on the courts. If she wasn't, then I'd have my answer. I made my way through the entrance, nodding politely to the staff. This was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, but no one really knew anyone. It was built on smiles, handshakes, and surface-level friendships that crumbled the moment you weren't in the room. I stepped onto the viewing deck near the courts, scanning the area. Women in designer sportswear, men pretending to be more athletic than they were, staff catering to every small whim. And then, there she was, Sophia. She was standing near the far court, dressed in her usual white tennis outfit, her visor pulled low over her face. She was talking to someone, her posture relaxed, casual. A man, not her coach, not one of the usual players I had seen her with before. Someone new. I narrowed my eyes, watching as she laughed at something he said. She touched his arm lightly, just for a second, but it was enough. I clenched my jaw. I had suspected something was going on, but now I was seeing it in real time. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Bursting in now wouldn't do me any favors. If I confronted her without real proof, she'd have an excuse ready, a way to flip it back on me, to make me seem like the paranoid, insecure husband. No, I needed more. I pulled out my phone and snapped a few discreet photos from a distance. Evidence. I wasn't sure I'd need them yet, but it was better to be prepared. Then, as I was watching, something unexpected happened. A second man walked up, older, familiar, her actual coach. Sophia immediately straightened, stepping away from the first man as if nothing had happened. The coach clapped a hand on the younger man's shoulder, laughing about something, and for a split second, I saw Sophia's shoulders relax. Something clicked in my mind. I had assumed this was the guy, the man she had been sneaking around with. But watching her reaction, the way she had tensed when her coach arrived, then relaxed the moment things seemed normal again, it told me something else entirely. The man she had been flirting with wasn't her lover. He was a distraction, a cover, which meant the real one was someone else entirely. I exhaled slowly, pocketing my phone. She had almost fooled me. If I hadn't seen that subtle change in her demeanor, I might have believed I had my answer. But now I knew I had only scratched the surface. I turned and left before she could see me. I needed to rethink my approach. I needed to dig deeper. Because if she was this careful, this calculated, then whoever she was really hiding had to be worth it. And I wasn't stopping until I found out who it was. I left the country club with more questions than answers. The man I had suspected wasn't the one. Sophia had acted too calm around him, too comfortable when her coach arrived. That meant she wasn't worried about being seen with him, because he wasn't the real problem. The real problem was still hidden. That meant I had to change my approach. Instead of chasing the wrong leads, I needed to focus on Sophia's habits. Her patterns, the little things that, until now, I had overlooked. She wasn't careless. If she had been, I would have caught her by now. That meant whatever she was doing, she had taken precautions. But no one was perfect. I spent the next few days watching, waiting, letting her believe she was in control while I gathered the pieces. I took note of the way she always left the house at the same time for her lessons. The way she never invited me to the club anymore, always brushing it off with a casual, "Oh, you'd be bored, it's just drills." The way she always came home exhausted, like she had really been pushing herself, yet her tennis bag never seemed to have a sweat-soaked towel inside. And then there was her phone. That damn phone. She had always been the type to leave it lying around, never concerned about privacy. Now it was either in her pocket, in her hand, or locked away in her bag. The only time she set it down was at night, when she thought I was asleep. That was my opening. That night I waited. I stayed perfectly still, my breathing even, listening as she shifted beside me. Eventually, her breathing slowed, steady and deep. As carefully as possible, I slid out of bed. Her phone was on the nightstand, face down, the way she always left it. I picked it up, my pulse steady, and turned it over. The screen lit up. No notifications. Nothing at all. She had cleared them before bed. Smart. but not smart enough. I carried it into the hallway, just in case the light woke her up, and tried a passcode. The one I used to know. Wrong. I exhaled slowly, thinking, what would she have changed it to? Something easy to remember. Something she wouldn't forget. I typed in our wedding anniversary. Wrong. I tried her birthday. Wrong. I clenched my jaw. She had changed it to something else. Something unrelated to us. And then a thought hit me. I typed in the first 6 digits of her club membership number. The screen unlocked. My stomach twisted. She hadn't even bothered to use something personal. She had used something convenient, something tied to the place where she spent all her time now. The place she had started treating like home. I opened her messages first. Nothing unusual. Just group chats, casual check-ins, plans for upcoming events. She had wiped anything incriminating. I moved to her call log. That's when I saw it. A repeated number, one that had been called every single day for the past month. No name attached, just digits. I stared at it for a long moment, something cold settling in my chest. Whoever this was, she talked to them a lot. I copied the number into my own phone before carefully placing hers back on the nightstand. Then I slid into bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. By morning, I had a plan. I stepped out onto the back patio with my coffee and dialed the number. It rang. Once. Twice. Then a voice answered. Hey, morning. What's up? A man's voice. I didn't speak. The man hesitated. Sophia. I hung up. My grip tightened around my phone. That confirmed it. Whoever this was, he expected her to be calling. Not Michelle's husband. Not a casual friend. Someone who knew her well enough to talk to her every day. I clenched my jaw. I needed to see for myself. That evening, Sophia came home, acting like everything was normal. She moved through her usual routine, chatting about meaningless things, not realizing I already knew. Not realizing I had checked her phone. Not realizing I had dialed that number. I have another late session tomorrow, she said casually, pouring herself a glass of wine. Might run longer than usual. I nodded. That's fine. She smiled, leaning against the counter. What about you? Any plans? I took a sip of my drink, meeting her gaze. Not sure yet. Might stop by the club. The briefest flicker of tension passed through her eyes. She recovered quickly, taking a sip of her wine, but I had seen it. I had just thrown her off balance. And now, I was going to watch her fall. The next morning, Sophia moved through the house like nothing had changed, but I knew better. She hummed softly as she packed her tennis bag, throwing a towel, a change of clothes, and a bottle of water, just like she always did. But this time, I wasn't watching with blind trust. I was watching for the details. She was more precise today, more careful. Her phone never left her side. When she kissed me goodbye, she held it in her hand, like she was afraid to leave it unattended for even a second. She thought she was being smart. She had no idea I was already ahead of her. As soon as she pulled out of the driveway, I grabbed my keys and followed. I kept my distance, letting other cars fall between us, my grip steady on the wheel. She drove the familiar route to the club, just like she always did. But I wasn't convinced she'd stay there. I parked a few spaces away and waited, watching as she climbed out of the car, her tennis bag slung over her shoulder. She walked through the entrance, greeting the staff with the same charming ease she used on everyone. I counted the minutes. 5, 10, 15. Then I saw him. Jake, Sophia's private instructor. He wasn't on the courts. He wasn't setting up for lessons. He was waiting near the back entrance, hidden from view. My grip tightened on the steering wheel as I watched him glance around before slipping inside through a side door. That was all I needed. I stepped out of my car, keeping my pace even as I approached the building. I didn't go through the main entrance. Instead, I walked around the side, moving through the shaded pathway that led to the club's private rooms, the massage rooms, the spa area, the places where members could relax away from the crowd. I stopped near the back door and listened. Muted voices, soft laughter. I pushed the door open just enough to see inside. Sophia was there. So was Jake. Her tennis bag was slung over the couch, completely untouched. She wasn't dressed for a lesson. She was dressed for him. She leaned in close, whispering something that made him smirk. He reached out, brushing a hand against her arm, and she didn't pull away. I exhaled slowly, a cold wave of realization settling deep in my chest. There it was, the proof I had been looking for. I had suspected, I had known, but seeing it with my own eyes? That was something else entirely. I could have stormed in. I could have made a scene. But what would that accomplish? She would cry. She would deny. She would twist the truth into something unrecognizable. No, I wasn't going to let her control the narrative. I was going to destroy it. I pulled my phone out and snapped a few pictures, making sure to capture every angle. The way she looked at him, the way he looked at her, the way her hand lingered on his chest just a second too long. Then I stepped back, letting the door ease shut without a sound. I walked away without a single word, without a single ounce of regret. By the time I got to my car, my mind was already spinning. This wasn't going to be some private confrontation behind closed doors. That would be too easy for her, too easy for both of them. No, if she wanted to play games, I was going to end it publicly. I started making calls. I had a plan. And when I was finished, Sophia wouldn't just lose me. She'd lose everything. I drove home with a steady grip on the wheel, my mind calculating every step I needed to take. Confronting her now would be pointless. She'd lie. She'd cry. She'd act offended that I'd even suggest such a thing. No, I wasn't going to waste my breath on arguments. I was going to make sure she felt the weight of her choices in a way she could never recover from. Sophia had spent years building herself into the perfect country club wife. She cared about her image more than anything, her social standing, her reputation, the admiration of other women who envied her effortless grace. She wore perfection like a shield, like armor, and she thought it made her untouchable. I was about to strip all of it away. I pulled into the driveway and stepped inside, making sure everything appeared normal. I moved through the house methodically, preparing for what came next. First, I backed up every piece of evidence I had: pictures, call logs, time-stamped records of her supposed tennis lessons that aligned perfectly with phone calls to Jake. Then, I transferred every important financial document into my name alone, locking her out of anything she might try to use against me. Once I was done, I made my final move. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in a long time. A deep voice answered. "Ethan, been a while." I leaned against the counter. "Got a favor to ask." There was a pause. Then curiosity. "What kind of favor?" "I need to dig a little deeper into someone," I said, my voice even. "Find out exactly how long this has been going on. Make sure I have everything I need before I make my next move." A low chuckle. "Sounds serious." "It is." There was no hesitation. "Send me the details. I'll handle it." I ended the call and exhaled slowly. This was bigger than just catching her in the act. If I was going to take her down, I needed to make sure I had everything. Every piece of leverage. Every scrap of truth she'd try to bury. And once I had it, I was going to make sure she never recovered. That evening, Sophia came home with the same rehearsed ease she always had. She kissed me on the cheek, dropped her tennis bag by the door, and stretched her arms with a dramatic sigh. "Boo, I'm exhausted." That session was brutal. I turned from the kitchen counter, hiding my smirk. "Yeah? Must have been tough." She nodded, grabbing a glass of water. "Jake really pushed me today. Said I need to work on my footwork before the tournament." She had no idea I'd been watching, that I'd seen her with him, whispering in that private room, her hand lingering on his chest like I didn't exist. I played along, nodding. "He's a great coach." She smiled. "The best." I wanted to laugh. I spent the rest of the evening pretending everything was normal, but inside, I was already miles ahead of her. By the next day, my investigator sent me exactly what I needed. Dates, records, surveillance footage of them meeting at the club after hours, disappearing into the private suites where no cameras were allowed. I stared at the evidence, my jaw tightening. This wasn't a one-time thing. This had been going on for months. And she had smiled at me every single day like nothing was happening. That was all I needed. That night, as she slept beside me, I looked at her one last time. Not with love, not with regret, but with the cold satisfaction of knowing what was coming. Her real match was about to begin, and she had already lost. The morning of the country club gala arrived, and Sophia was glowing. She spent hours getting ready, trying on different dresses before finally settling on an elegant emerald green gown that hugged her figure perfectly. She looked like the picture of grace, of wealth, of everything she wanted the world to believe she was. I watched her adjust her earrings in the mirror, her eyes gleaming with excitement. Tonight was important to her, not just because she was being honored, but because it solidified her place among the club's elite. She had spent years building her image, curating friendships, and positioning herself as a respected figure in this world. She had no idea that by the end of the night, it would all be over. I adjusted my cufflinks, keeping my expression neutral as she turned to me with a radiant smile. "Are you ready?" she asked. I smiled back. "More than you know." We arrived at the gala hand in hand, the perfect couple. The room was filled with the club's most influential members, business moguls, socialites, board members, and sponsors. Waiters moved through the crowd with trays of champagne, and the hum of polite conversation filled the grand ballroom. Sophia immediately slipped into hostess mode, greeting people with effortless charm. She laughed at jokes, exchanged air kisses, and accepted compliments with graceful modesty. She was in her element. I watched her work the room, smiling, acting like the devoted wife she had long since stopped being. My grip tightened around my glass. These people saw her as an icon of elegance, of class. By the time I was done, they would see her for what she really was. The event moved along smoothly: cocktails, dinner, speeches. Then, the moment Sophia had been waiting for arrived. One of the board members took the stage, smiling warmly as he tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here tonight. It is my pleasure to introduce someone who has been an integral part of this club's community, someone who has dedicated herself to charity, to leadership, and to excellence both on and off the court." Applause. Murmurs of approval. I glanced at Sophia. She sat poised, beaming with anticipation, her fingers lightly resting on the table. The board member continued. "Tonight, we honor Sophia Thompson for her outstanding contributions and commitment to the values we hold dear." A spotlight illuminated her as the crowd erupted into applause. She stood gracefully, smiling as she prepared to make her way to the stage. But before she could take a step, I leaned in, my voice low. "You might want to wait." She frowned slightly, turning to me. "What?" I stood up, buttoning my jacket, and strode toward the stage before she could react. The board member gave me a slightly puzzled look as I took the microphone from his hands, but he stepped aside without protest. The room quieted, all eyes turning toward me. I could feel the tension shift, curiosity replacing polite applause. I smiled, the picture of calm. "Before my wife accepts this incredible honor," I began, my voice carrying easily through the ballroom, "I'd like to make a special donation in her name, a way to truly commemorate everything she's done for this community." Sophia's smile faltered slightly, but she kept her expression composed. I turned toward the massive projector screen behind me, where the club had been displaying images of past galas, charity events, and members in action. I gestured toward it. I put together a little presentation to celebrate her journey here. A murmur went through the crowd as the lights dimmed. The screen flickered, and for a brief moment, a picture of Sophia accepting an award from last year's gala appeared. Then it changed. The first image was grainy, security footage from outside the club's private suites. Sophia and Jake slipping through the door together. A few gasps echoed through the room. The next image was clearer, a candid shot of them standing too close, her hand resting on his chest. The murmurs grew louder. Then the final image, a crystal-clear snapshot of them inside the suite, her face tilted up toward him, lips parted in a whisper, his hand gripping her waist. A sharp intake of breath. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." I turned to look at Sophia. She had gone completely still, her face drained of color. Her hands, once gracefully folded in her lap, now gripped the tablecloth with white-knuckled desperation. The crowd erupted into hushed conversations, disbelief spreading like wildfire. Some guests looked at her in shock, others in barely concealed amusement. I let the moment stretch before I spoke again, my tone smooth, measured. "I'd like to personally donate $50,000 in Sophia's name," I said, turning back to the stunned audience. so that we can all remember the values she's upheld so faithfully. A few men in the audience chuckled, their expressions knowing. Women whispered behind manicured hands. The board members exchanged looks of discomfort. Sophia finally found her voice. She shot up from her chair, her breaths shallow. "Ethan, we need to." I held up a hand. "Oh, we're done talking." Her eyes darted around the room, searching for support, but there was none. Her perfect image, the one she had spent years building, had just shattered beyond repair. The board members huddled in quiet discussion. Then, one of them, a distinguished older gentleman, stood up and cleared his throat. "Sophia," he said, his voice polite but firm, "perhaps we should discuss your membership status privately." Sophia looked at him, horrified. "Wait." The club's director, a woman who had once adored Sophia, pursed her lips and stood. "I think, given recent revelations, it's best if we suspend your membership, effective immediately." Sophia let out a shaky breath. "This isn't happening," she whispered. "Oh, but it was." I leaned toward her, my voice low enough for only her to hear. "You thought you could humiliate me behind my back and still walk around like the queen of this club?" I smirked. "How does it feel to lose?" Her eyes were wild now, panicked. She reached out, gripping my wrist. "Ethan, please. Let's go home and talk." I pulled my arm away. "There's nothing to talk about." With that, I turned and walked out. As I reached the exit, I could still hear the murmurs, the whispered conversations that would soon turn into a full-blown scandal. Sophia had spent years crafting her perfect world, and in one night, I had burned it to the ground. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like, and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.